A 4-year-old orphan boy shivered, the cold tile floor burning against his thin legs. His tattered clothes barely covered his frail little body, which looked like it was only 2 years old. Such was his fragility. His shoes had holes in them, leaving his small feet exposed to the cold that crept up from the concrete floor. The other children in the class played and chatted animatedly, but he remained isolated in his corner, holding a piece of paper where he had drawn flowers with a broken pencil he had found in the trash. The shrill voice of the cruel teacher echoed through the room like a whip, her small, hard eyes fixed on the boy with a cruelty that made the air heavy. She approached with firm steps, each tap of her heel against the floor sounding like a hammer. The boy raised his brown eyes, still bright despite all the suffering, and found only contempt on the face of the woman who should have protected him. "You'll never amount to anything." The teacher shouted these words in front of all the children, who stopped their activities to observe the scene. "Kids like you are just a burden. Look at those filthy clothes, those ripped shoes. It's a disgrace." Tears welled up instantly in the boy's eyes and ran down his dirty face, leaving clean streaks on his dusty skin. His lips trembled, but no sound came out. He had learned that crying loudly only made things worse. The other children began to laugh and point at his ragged clothes, repeating the teacher's cruel words like a macabre chorus. "Look at the little orphan crying," shouted a boy with blonde hair. "My mom says kids without parents are cursed," said a girl in a pink dress, pinching her nose in disgust. The laughter grew louder and louder, crueler and crueler. The boy shrank his small body, trying to become invisible, wishing the earth would open up and swallow him. It was at this moment of total humiliation that the classroom door slowly opened. A stunning woman in her early 30s entered, looking for the principal. Her dark hair shone under the fluorescent light, and she wore an elegant suit that cost more than most people earned in a year. She was a millionaire businesswoman, owner of a chain of restaurants throughout the state. Her wealth was known to all. They said she had amassed a great fortune investing in stocks since she was young, and that her net worth in dollars seemed endless. The businesswoman's eyes scanned the room quickly until they fixed on the scene unfolding before her. She had arrived for a meeting about possible improvements to the school when she heard the shouting coming from the classroom. Her expression changed completely as she witnessed the cruelty being inflicted on the defenseless boy. The teacher, noticing the presence of the important woman, tried to disguise what had happened. "Oh, ma'am, I was just educating this child about—" But her words died in her throat when she saw the businesswoman's gaze. It was a look she knew well from business, cold, calculating, and absolutely ruthless. Without saying a word, the millionaire walked to where the boy was sitting. To the amazement of everyone in the room, she knelt beside him, her expensive clothes touching the dirty floor without any hesitation. From her Italian leather bag, she took out a white silk scarf and began to gently wipe the tears from the boy's face. "Hey, little artist," she whispered, noticing the crumpled drawing in his small hands. "These flowers are beautiful. Did you draw them?" The boy nodded shyly, unable to speak. For the first time in a long time, someone had spoken to him with kindness. Someone had noticed his art. The teacher tried to justify her words, stammering apologies and explanations about discipline, but the millionaire interrupted her with an icy stare that silenced the entire room instantly. "I believe our meeting can wait," she said, her voice low but full of authority. "I need to better understand how children are treated here." The boy looked at that woman who seemed to have come out of a fairy tale, with her perfumed hair and soft hands that touched his face carefully. He didn't know that his life was about to change forever. He didn't know that that powerful woman carried her own scars and would see in him something that would touch her deeply. As the businesswoman helped the boy to his feet, holding his small, cold hand, neither of them imagined the dark secrets that were about to be revealed, nor the shocking truths that would connect their lives in ways they could never have imagined. 3 weeks had passed since the encounter at the school, and the businesswoman couldn't get the orphan boy out of her thoughts. During her business meetings, while analyzing financial reports and supervising her restaurants, the image of that dirty little face and sad eyes haunted her. She had built a gastronomic empire that made millions, with diversified investments and an income that grew constantly, but for the first time in years, money seemed unimportant. On a rainy afternoon, she decided to visit the orphanage where the boy lived. The building was located on the outskirts of the city, an old, dark brick building that seemed to have been forgotten by time. The peeling paint on the walls and dirty windows revealed the neglect of the place. She parked her imported car at the muddy entrance and walked to the main door, where she was greeted by the director, a stout woman in her 50s, with small eyes and a forced smile that didn't hide her greed. "What an honor to receive you here," said the director, rubbing her hands servilely. "I imagine you've come to make a generous donation to our institution. We always need resources to care for these troubled children." The businesswoman asked to see the facilities, especially where the boy she had met at school was living. The director guided her through the damp corridors, showing cramped rooms with rusty bunk beds and bathrooms in deplorable conditions. The smell of mold permeated the air, mixed with the smell of spoiled food coming from the kitchen. It was when they descended the creaking stairs that led to the basement that the businesswoman discovered the shocking truth. Down there, in an even more precarious environment, was the orphan boy sleeping on an old stained mattress, surrounded by moisture dripping from the concrete walls. Next to him, 6 other smaller orphans shared the freezing space, all with dirty clothes and faces thin from malnutrition. "Why are these children down here?" asked the millionaire, her voice trembling with contained indignation. The director shrugged indifferently. "They're the most troublesome. The boy you met keeps drawing on the walls, making everything dirty. The others are too whiny. Here they learn discipline." The boy woke up with the voices and, seeing the businesswoman, his eyes lit up with a spark of hope that she hadn't seen in weeks. On the walls around his room were dozens of drawings made with charcoal, faces, landscapes, animals, all executed with impressive skill for a 4-year-old child. It was as if he drew to survive, transforming that dark place into his personal gallery. During the following weeks, the businesswoman began to secretly visit the orphanage, always bringing nutritious food and clean clothes for the 7 forgotten children in the basement. She discovered that they only ate 1 meal a day, a thin soup of almost rotten vegetables, and that they were often punished for any small transgression, such as crying or asking for water. But it was during one of these visits that the first small twist happened. While talking to other employees of the orphanage, the businesswoman discovered that the director was diverting donations intended for the children to her personal account. Falsified receipts, altered invoices, and secret bank accounts proved a scheme that had lasted for years. The money that should have bought food, medicine, and clothes for the orphans was financing the luxurious life of the director and her family. The second small twist came when the businesswoman tried to find the documents of the boy who had touched her heart. To her surprise, she discovered that he had no birth certificate, civil registry, or any identification. He had been abandoned as a baby on the doorstep of the orphanage, wrapped only in an old blanket, without any clue about his origin or family. The third small twist shocked her even more. It wasn't just the artist boy who lived without documents. All 7 children in the basement were officially ghosts. They existed only within those dark walls, invisible to the system, which facilitated the abuse and neglect they suffered daily. Determined to act, the businesswoman sought a lawyer specializing in adoption. That's when she faced the first significant obstacle. A state law required adoption applicants to be married for at least 5 years. As a single woman, focused entirely on her business and investments, she was legally prevented from adopting any of the children. The second obstacle came when she tried to report the orphanage's irregularities to local authorities. To her surprise, she discovered that the mayor of the town was the brother-in-law of the corrupt director. The complaints were filed without investigation, the reports disappeared mysteriously, and public officials who tried to help were transferred to other departments. Meanwhile, the orphan boy continued to draw obsessively. With the art supplies that the businesswoman had brought, colored pencils, clean paper, crayons, he created detailed portraits of all the people who passed through his life. There were drawings of the cruel teacher, the evil director, the other children, and especially dozens of portraits of the beautiful woman who had become his only hope for a better life. His striking personality was a silent determination that impressed even the adults. Even suffering, sick and weak, he never stopped drawing, as if through art he could create the world he dreamed of having. His internal conflict was devastating. The constant struggle between the hope of finally being loved and the paralyzing fear of being abandoned again, as had happened so many times in his short life. The businesswoman, in turn, felt driven by a motivation that she herself did not fully understand. There was a void in her heart that all her wealth and success could not fill, a hole left by the loss of her own parents when she was still a child. Seeing that talented boy and the other abandoned children, she found a purpose greater than all her lucrative businesses. But the situation was about to get even more complicated, and much darker secrets were about to come to light. 2 months had passed since the businesswoman discovered the horrible conditions of the orphanage. During that period, she had spent a fortune hiring lawyers and private investigators, determined to find a legal loophole that would allow her to save the children. Her businesses began to suffer from her constant absence, but she didn't care. For the first time in years, something was more important than profits and dividends. It was on a cold morning that she received a desperate call from an orphanage employee. The orphan boy had fainted during the only meal of the day and had a very high fever. When the businesswoman arrived at the scene, she found the boy unconscious, his small body burning with temperature, while the director insisted that it was just a tantrum to get attention. Without asking permission, the millionaire picked up the boy in her arms and ran him to the most expensive private hospital in the area. For 3 agonizing days, she remained by his bedside, watching that innocent child fight for his life. The doctors discovered severe malnutrition, profound anemia, and a lung infection caused by the excessive humidity of the basement where he slept. While the boy slowly recovered, connected to tubes and monitors, the businesswoman made a decision that would change everything. She used her contacts and influence to hire a team of private investigators, determined to uncover the truth about the corruption scheme that kept those children in suffering. The first medium twist exploded when the investigators discovered that the mayor of the town not only protected the sister-in-law's scheme, but also received a percentage of all the diverted donations. Bank documents revealed substantial monthly transfers from the director's account to offshore accounts controlled by the corrupt politician. The money that should have fed orphans was financing election campaigns and luxury properties. The second medium twist came from where the businesswoman least expected it, her own employees. She discovered that some of her trusted managers and executives were secretly sabotaging her attempts to help the children. They had begun to spread rumors that she was losing focus on the business and wasting company resources on unnecessary charity. Important meetings were purposely rescheduled, lucrative contracts were delayed, and financial reports were altered to show non-existent losses. When the boy finally woke up in the hospital, his first reaction was pure terror. He thought he was in trouble for getting sick and began to cry, apologizing repeatedly. The businesswoman held his small, fragile hand, promising that he would never go back to that damp basement. It was then that he gave her a drawing he had made before fainting, a portrait of her smiling, surrounded by all 7 children from the orphanage, all wearing clean clothes and holding colored balloons. The third medium twist arose when the businesswoman tried to move the boy to a public hospital, thinking that this would facilitate the legal process of temporary adoption for medical reasons. To her surprise and horror, she discovered that the director had registered all 7 children in the basement as having severe mental disabilities, a cruel lie that made them unadoptable, according to official records. This charade allowed the orphanage to receive special funds from the government, money that was also being diverted. While fighting against bureaucracy and corruption, the businesswoman faced the third most painful obstacle of all: rejection from her own social class. Millionaire friends who frequented the same exclusive country clubs began to avoid her, considering her obsession with orphans as a sign of mental instability. Business deals were cancelled, commercial partnerships ended, and her reputation in the corporate world began to crumble. The fourth obstacle came in the form of direct threats. The businesswoman began to receive anonymous calls in the middle of the night, unsigned letters left at her house, and even had her car sabotaged twice. The messages were always the same: stop meddling where you don't belong, or the consequences will be serious. During this 7-month period of relentless battle, the environment around her completely transformed. The small, quiet town was divided into 2 camps: those who supported the businesswoman and her fight for justice, and those who defended local institutions and wanted her to go back where she came from. Protests took place in the town square, local newspapers published inflammatory editorials, and even radio shows debated the case daily. The fourth medium twist was the most devastating of all. The businesswoman discovered that 3 of her most profitable restaurants had been closed due to sanitary irregularities that never existed. The inspectors responsible were all appointed by the corrupt mayor. She lost million-dollar contracts, fired dozens of employees, and saw her net worth decrease dramatically. Her investments in the stock market were liquidated to pay lawyers and investigators. Her savings were withdrawn to cover the children's medical expenses, and even some of her assets had to be sold. The boy, even while still recovering in the hospital, continued to draw with an obsession that impressed doctors and nurses. He created detailed portraits of each person who entered his room, capturing not only the physical appearance, but also expressions and emotions with an accuracy that was frightening for such a small child. His works showed an artistic maturity that didn't make sense with his age and life experience. It was during an especially difficult night, when the businesswoman was alone in the hospital, questioning whether all this struggle was worth it, that she noticed something strange in the boy's drawings. Scattered on the room's table were dozens of portraits of people she had never seen in her life, but whom the boy drew with the same precision as familiar faces. When asked about them, the boy said they were people from old dreams, figures that appeared in his mind when he closed his eyes. Among these mysterious drawings, there was one that made the businesswoman's heart stop: the portrait of a young and beautiful woman, with eyes identical to the boy's, holding brushes and paint palettes. In the lower corner of the paper, with the boy's childish but careful handwriting, was written, "My artist mom." The businesswoman felt a chill run down her spine. There was something about that drawn face that was strangely familiar to her, as if she had seen that woman somewhere a long time ago. The discovery of the artist mom drawing triggered an investigation that the businesswoman never expected to undertake. For 3 weeks, she hired genealogists and detectives specializing in missing persons, spending the last resources from her savings to discover the identity of the woman in the portrait. Her businesses continued to decline, but an inexplicable force drove her to seek the truth. It was on a rainy afternoon that the lead investigator brought the first clues. The artistic style of the boy's drawings was identical to that of a famous painter who had disappeared mysteriously 6 years earlier. The woman was known for her realistic portraits and had won international awards before disappearing without a trace. When the businesswoman saw the photographs of the artist, her heart almost stopped. It was exactly the woman in the boy's drawing. The first major twist exploded like a bomb when they discovered that the missing artist had not simply fled or suffered an accident. She had been forcibly separated from her newborn baby through an illegal scheme coordinated by the orphanage director herself. Falsified documents proved that the woman had been declared mentally unstable after giving birth, allowing them to take the child from her arms and commit her to a private psychiatric clinic. For agonizing weeks, the businesswoman delved into the medical records and discovered an even more sinister network of corruption. The orphanage director not only diverted donations, but also coordinated the illegal separation between vulnerable mothers and their babies. Single, poor, or familyless women were preferred targets. Their children were sold to wealthy families in other parts of the country, while they were medicated with drugs that affected their memory and ability to fight. The second major twist came when the businesswoman discovered records of dozens of cases similar to this one over 20 years. The missing artist was just one of many victims. Babies were literally traded as commodities, with prices varying according to the child's appearance and health. The orphan boy had been rejected by buyers for being too small and appearing to have health problems, being left at the orphanage as a defective product. But it was the discovery of the director's personal files that brought the most shocking twist of all. Among stacks of documents kept in a hidden safe, the businesswoman found her own original birth certificate. To her absolute horror, she discovered that she herself had been illegally adopted through the same scheme 26 years earlier. Her millionaire adoptive parents had bought a baby through the criminal network, and she had grown up without knowing that she was a victim of the same system she was now fighting. The third and most devastating revelation came when they compared the original documents. The missing artist was her younger, biological sister. They had been born to a young and poor woman who died in childbirth of her second daughter. The businesswoman, then 4 years old, had been sold to a wealthy family who couldn't have children, while the baby, future artist, was given to another family years later. The orphan boy was her nephew. All that suffering, all that struggle had been to save the son of her own sister, a woman she never knew existed, but who shared the same artistic talent that she saw in the child's drawings. Armed with all the evidence, the businesswoman finally managed to expose the criminal scheme. The investigation revealed that more than 200 children had been separated from their biological families over 2 decades. Many of the unstable mothers were still alive, medicated and confined to private clinics, believing that their children had died at birth. The corrupt director and her accomplices were arrested in an operation involving federal authorities as the scheme crossed state lines. The corrupt mayor was removed from office and also faced criminal charges. The public officials who facilitated the system were fired and prosecuted. During the 8 months of battle, the businesswoman had sacrificed almost all of her fortune, her business reputation, and her social life. But when she finally managed to legally adopt not only her nephew, but also the other 6 children who suffered in the basement of the orphanage, she realized that she had gained something much more valuable than any income or assets, a real family united by love and overcoming. The boy, now surrounded by adequate medical care and unconditional love, flourished as a child prodigy. His drawings became more colorful, more cheerful, portraying the new life he was building. The city, initially divided, united to support the changes. New child protection laws were passed, a rigorous inspection system was implemented, and support centers for vulnerable mothers were created. The cruel teacher, who had humiliated the boy at school, was fired and forced to do community service in daycare centers in poor neighborhoods, where she learned in practice the value and potential of each child. Many of the other victims of the scheme were reunited with their biological families or found new loving homes. The businesswoman, even having lost most of her wealth, rebuilt her businesses with a completely new perspective. Her restaurants became meeting places for adoptive families, offering special discounts and creating community support programs. She discovered that true wealth was not in her stock investments or her net worth in dollars, but in the 7 children who now called her mum. The orphan boy, who had once been humiliated for his appearance and origin, became an inspiration to the entire community. His works of art, created during the darkest moments of his life, were exhibited in local galleries, with all proceeds going to organizations that protect children at risk. Years later, when visiting the grave of the artist, her biological sister, who'd been found in a psychiatric clinic but had unfortunately died due to excessive medication, the businesswoman and her nephew always brought flowers drawn by him. There, in front of the simple tombstone, she told stories about the talented mother he never knew, but whose talent he had inherited. The small town became a national example of child protection. The orphanage was completely renovated and transformed into an art and education center, where children from all over the region came to develop their talents. The 7 children from the basement became symbols of overcoming, each following their own path, but all united by the family they had chosen to build together. The boy, now a recognized young artist, never forgot where he came from. His most famous paintings always portrayed children smiling, children being hugged, children safe and loved. Through his art, he transformed all the pain and suffering into messages of hope that touched hearts around the world, proving that even in the darkest circumstances, love and determination can create true miracles.